Hi everybody, this is Strategize with Get.Set.Law, and today the series is Best of Critical Reasoning. I am Anuja and I will take you through a quick set where we will discuss the concepts and all the questions. So if you are ready, let's get started. I have picked up this set because this is an easy one. I think all of us will find it very interesting to read. Also, when we discuss the questions, I get to discuss the question types with you and the strategies. Okay, I recommend that you take notes. Now, critical reasoning is one of the most important parts of your examination, and that is why it is very important that you pay close attention to the elimination strategy. Now, let us begin by reading the first paragraph together. When we read the paragraph together, we don't have to discuss every single line or every single word. We just need to ensure that you and I both get the crux of it. Okay, so shall we go? Here we are talking about Australia, which has very unique flora and fauna, as you might have heard. We are talking about a place called Wollongong, where there's a sign for passers-by. It says birds swooping. Now, what does that mean? What is this swooping season in Australia? Let me give you a bit of background here. So what happens is when the birds have nested and the chicks are not old enough to defend themselves, that's when the birds swoop once in a while when they see somebody coming close to the nest and they try to protect their chicks. That is what the sign is about. Okay, so the sign is saying dismount and walk your bike through this area. That means do not ride your bike, but walk your bike. That means there's definitely some kind of assumption on the part of the people who have made this notice. They believe it will be safer if you just walk your bike, not ride your bike through this area. Why? Because magpies are nesting in this area. I'd like you to find out about magpies more. Magpies are interesting birds. They are perched high up in the trees and they swoop down when they want to save their chicks, like I explained. Now, what happened here? Why is this reference given to us? The organizers of the 2022 UCI Road World Championship. This championship began on Sunday, ran all week. Author believes they must have missed this memorandum. Why? Because the finish line for the race is right near the sign. And of course, as you must have already deduced, it is causing chaos for the world's best cyclist. Now, what is this Australian rider telling us? He says, I've been swooped twice already today. Forget about what's happening to international athletes. Even when I'm an Australian rider, I have been swooped twice today. Now, next paragraph takes us forward to tell us more about the dangers that cyclists have to face. They get accustomed to danger while riding. Author says this sport takes place in an uncontrolled environment. That means on-road hazards like signage or drainage levels, they're quite common. This happens. They say a collision between the peloton and a motorbike caused chaos at Tour de France. That is such a prestigious event. I'm sure you must have heard about it. What's a peloton, by the way? A peloton is a group of cyclists, hundreds of them probably, who are going forward. Okay, so these things keep happening. But this year, what has happened in Australia, the 1,000-strong international peloton, they've come together from 70 countries and they are just taken aback. They're surprised by these aerial attacks from birds. Okay, now author says, although the world tour does include an Australian leg in January each year, since there is a plan behind it, everybody can be very sure when this is supposed to happen. This is the first time in over a decade that the World Championships have been staged on these shores during the swooping season. So please take note that there is a well-defined swooping season as well. Okay, and precisely during this part, they have decided that they are going to hold this championship. So you get the context. I feel there's a kind of problematic situation that the author is trying to highlight, and we got to know what that situation is. Now let us move on to our very first question. First, let's understand what the question expects us to do. then we will have a quick look at all the options, and rather than selecting, I recommend that we eliminate, because that will give us a lot more surety about our answer. You do remember that there is a negative marking of 1 by 4, right? So let's read the first question together. It says, which of the following will strengthen the author's belief that the organizers weren't thorough in their preparation for exigencies? What are exigencies? Emergencies. Now, author's belief is clear, that's his conclusion, that the organizers weren't prepared for this. There was a sign right there which they did not read. Okay, now if you have to strengthen this belief, what could you say? Is it A? It says January is summer in Australia and the organizers placed water kiosk at every kilometer gap. That would show that the organizers were very well prepared, right? So it is not strengthening author's belief. It is kind of going against it. Quick tip. It's always very easy to identify the statements which are quite the contrary, right? So this one is contrary. This is definitely not my answer. Let's look at option B. One of the main roads along the route was jammed because of a mix-up of dates for which the road had to be blocked for traffic. Now, if there is a mix-up of dates, here is something for which we can hold the organizers accountable. Why? Because dates are schedule is obviously decided in advance, and if they are not able to plan it accordingly, then this is a mistake on the part of organizers. This does the job. B has to be my answer. But wait a second, let me read the other two options also and take a final call about it. Let's move on to C. A part of the route was submerged in waist-deep water due to flash floods. Now, if flash floods come, that's a sudden event. That's an act of God. You can't really blame the organizers about it, can you? So, this can't be my answer. Let's read option D. Many athletes could not find the hotel rooms allotted to them due to a glitch in hotel software. If it's a glitch in hotel software, then again, see, you can't blame the organizers for something they didn't do. That wouldn't be fair. So what is my answer after the second round of elimination? That is option B. Now, what is the strategy that we need to remember when it comes to strengthening questions or supporting the author question or giving more credence to what he's saying? First, you identify what the main conclusion is. Here, that is already done for you. Then you try to think, what is the premise? What is the assumption? How have we landed at that conclusion? Once you know those things, then you say something in support of it. Okay? It would be very easy if you first eliminate the contrary statements, the weakening ones. Then you look for the ones that are irrelevant. And finally, you filter the one which is supporting the assertion. Okay? Moving on to question number 2. Already we know we've got a +1 here. Question 2. Which of the following is the most analogous to the magpie menace faced by the competitors? You remember the swooping magpies trying to save their chicks, that menace they are talking about. You have to look for something which is most analogous to it. That means quite similar, quite parallel reasoning to this. Is it A? A platoon of soldiers is fired upon by the enemy while on patrol. This isn't kind of similar to what happened here. This is an occupational hazard, right? A soldier's being fired upon by the enemy is something that was somewhere, sometime or later bound to happen, right? So it can't be A. Let's read B. A group of students is forced to attend classes in extreme cold because the room heaters malfunctioned. If they malfunctioned, nobody could have planned in advance for that kind of thing. So it's not analogous to our situation. So the situation that happened here, it's very clear in a certain sense that the swooping season was defined, the dates of the race were defined. Now, why did we not think clearly enough to keep these two dates separate? That's the whole question. Okay. C. A hiking guide takes hikers through an area where bears are just ending their hibernation. Now, this is something which is similar to the magpie menace. The hiking guide should have known about the situation that bears are just going to come out of their hibernation. And when that happens, he shouldn't be taking hikers through that area, right? So that is why this seems to be the most analogous one, the most parallel one. Let's also read option D. A number of cyclists racing on the road are injured when their bikes spill or slip on an oil spill. Now, if there is an oil spill, again, that is not something that we knew was in the schedule, right? It's an accident, and an accident is not what happened in our scenario. So before we move on to the next question, I want you to remember, with critical reasoning, you are training yourself to think. And if in the beginning itself you are hard pressed for time, you want to do it very quickly, then it's not really going to help. You need to ensure that you read slowly, gently, understand everything, make sure that your reasons for choosing a particular answer are correct too, and only then move on. Okay, so we have done a parallel reasoning question. We have done a strengthening the conclusion question. Let's see what we have in store next for you. Question number 3 says, you have to strengthen the argument. Which of the following if true? So remember, these options are not statements from the passage. They can be from the outside world. You just have to imagine them to be true. If they are true, which one of them would most strengthen the argument that the organizers did not plan the event well? Okay, so again, kind of a similar thing to question number 1. Could it be A? Athletes should expect to encounter wildlife and should handle such encounters on their own. You're asking athletes to manage everything on their own. Would they compete in the race or fend such problems? I don't think A is helping us here. What does B say? Across the world, magpies' aggressive behavior is viewed as a harmless nuisance. Now, when you say it's aggressive and it's harmless, first of all, those two things can't really go together. But even if they do, if you call it a harmless nuisance, then why would we even blame the poor organizers saying that they did not plan the event well? So it can't be B. C says the usual practice of consulting the weather department and local wildlife experts was not done this time. Now, this is an aberration. This is an anomaly. And it shows that the organizers could have done better. It was a usual practice. They generally do the consultation, but this time they didn't do it. So yes, C is definitely the one that we should consider. Let's read D as well. The magpies made a nesting site near the finishing line after the route of the race had been finalized. Now, if this is the scenario, if what magpies did was later than what organizers did, then you can't really blame the organizers, right? Get the timeline correct in your head and the answer would be as clear as crystal to you. Okay, so we've done 2 strengthening questions, 1 parallel reasoning question. Stay with me, there are 2 more questions to come. Let's move on to the 4th question type. The author makes organizers of this Road World Championship seem a bit inefficient by how? What is his modus operandi? How is he doing that? Is he doing A? Is he quoting Grace Brown on her magpie-related experience? Even if yes, is this how he's showing the organizers to be inefficient? Not really. Reporting that one leg of this championship is held in Australia every year. Maybe this is part of the information, but not the critical part. Is it C? He's reporting that magpies have a well-defined swooping season. If they do have a well-defined swooping season, then shouldn't you have considered that before planning anything else, right? That can be something. D says, presenting other dangers that cyclists cannot be totally insured against. In critical reasoning, they'll be presenting you with a lot of data. But as careful readers, you need to filter out. You need to understand what is this chaos that I need to remove in order to reach that oasis of clarity. And this is exactly what this option is about. It's talking about other dangers, and in this passage, we are not dealing with other dangers. Yeah, as a passing remark, we did mention that cyclists deal with all sorts of problems, but the passage is not about other dangers. So I think we all are clear that the answer should be C. This was the penultimate question. Now it's time for the final question of this set. Which of the following does the warning sign at this park, Lang Park, imply? Imply. When you say imply, it means hints. It doesn't mean that it was categorically, explicitly written there. It was hinted, and you, as a careful reader, were supposed to infer. So is it A? Magpies in general feel more threatened by a pedestrian than by a cyclist. Now, whenever I imply something, I need evidence for that. Did they compare pedestrian versus a cyclist? Even for a cyclist, they said, don't ride your cycle, just walk your cycle. So in that regard, a pedestrian and a cyclist don't really vary from each other, do they? Option B. A swooping magpie can cause more trouble to one while riding a bicycle than while walking. Now, this is something, because try to negate it. Try to make it opposite. Had this not happened, why would they ask the riders to not ride the bike, but you can walk it, right? You're getting the point? Option C. Magpies nest in that area the whole year around. I don't think we can comment on that, because the sign was about that time period, not the whole year around. And what is D saying? At least some birds in Australia are strong enough to take on adult human beings. I don't think this is considered logical enough, because this is kind of far-fetched. To take on human beings, it's like a fight, and I don't think we have enough evidence to conclude that much. So I'll quickly run you through the most important learnings that we have got today. We have first of all understood the art of analytical reasoning and analytical reading. Now, what exactly is that? When you read something, make sure you break it down to small enough parts so that you can process everything properly. If required, you could highlight, you could note down, you could reread. Even that is okay. And the more you practice, the faster you become. Now, when you come to the question, remember, you should always have your premise, assumptions, conclusion beforehand, because you'll require all these in order to strengthen or weaken or whatever you're supposed to do. Okay? I hope this session was super useful for all of you. I would love to see you in more such sessions. Do not forget to practice these questions on your own, and let me know if there's any other topic that you want me to talk about. Happy preparation.